Доброе утро, уважаемые коллеги.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. We are ready to open our session, Network Measurements and Analysis. This area of activity is typical for large corporations and also not-for-profit organizations. And what it requires is extensive expertise in the field of networking technologies and network topology, as well as the rules of the use of unique identifiers. So this is indeed an intricate field of knowledge and an extensive field of knowledge too. In order to prepare a specification, you have to be an expert, and then you have to be also an expert in order to interpret the specification, to implement it, and then interpret the results of measurements. We will have several panelists. We will start with the presentation from RIPE NCC. Bastian Koslings will be our first speaker. Bastian, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just let me share my screen. So before I start, can you see the first screen, the introduction screen, RPKI introduction and activity update? Can you see that?
Yes, we can. Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Everything works fine.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pity I cannot join you guys physically at the meeting, but I'm, proud and honored to be able to contribute in this small way. I will be giving 15 minutes, so a short introduction as well as an activity date with regard to RPKI. And I will be doing that on behalf of the RIPE NCC. That's my employer. The RIPE NCC is a regional internet registry based in Amsterdam. And I joined the public policy team in April last year. And I mainly deal with public authorities, especially the Dutch ones, the RIPE NCC being based in the jurisdiction of the Netherlands, but also more and more legislative initiatives are coming from the European Union angle, from Brussels. So those are the main areas that I'm involved in. So I'm not very technical, but I think, routing security in terms of engaging with public authorities is a very important topic as well. So brief outline of my presentation. I will briefly, touch on what the RIPE NCC is as a regional internet registry, what we do, what we stand for. Then BGP, routing incidents, and how RPKI fits into that as an instrument to improve routing security, the role of the RIPE NCC there. Maybe of interest, some local regional statistics, what's happening in Russia in that area. And then some concrete things that the RIPE NCC is doing at the moment, both in the policy area with regard to RPKI, as well as technically. And if we have some time, remaining for questions, happy to answer those. If I'm technically not able to, then I'm more than glad to take them on board and follow up on those later with the help of technical expertise of colleagues of mine. So with regard to the RIPE NCC, as I mentioned, a regional internet registry, there are 5 of those globally. And what we do is manage the allocation and registration of autonomous system numbers and IP address space in Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. That also includes the Russian Federation. So what that means is that we ensure the unique holdership of those resources that we distribute amongst our members. So organizations that use those IP addresses and autonomous system numbers that need them and get them from the RIPE NCC, they become a member. There are more than 20,000 in our service region. This holdership resources that have been distributed is registered in a public database, so everyone can see who is holder of which resources. There are digital certificates that can be distributed to those members so they can sign their resources. I will go into that in more detail later because that applies to RPKI. So with regard to BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol, the routing protocol of the internet, the protocol that helps all the tens of thousands individually managed networks, the autonomous systems that make up the entire internet, the network of networks, the protocol that they use to share information with each other, reachability of each other. This protocol, the way that information is shared, assumes that everyone is telling the truth. that what you receive is a fact. But is that always the case? In a nutshell, this protocol does not include any built-in security. Any autonomous system can announce any prefix. So also prefix is IP address space that has been assigned to other autonomous systems. Anyone, when announcing reachability of their networks, can change, can make, can prepend, you know, the autonomous system numbers in a so-called BGP AS path. So the path that you need in order to reach a certain prefix. And these prefixes, these announcements that are spread out, that are communicated amongst the autonomous systems, if nothing happens, and they are just accepted without validating that. So this means that if incorrect routing information is shared, then this will just be propagated all over the internet, and that can have consequences. Because of the trust built in, and basically you being able to announce anything you would like to announce, whether it's true or not, that means it's susceptible for incidents. Things can go wrong. And even worse, if you have malicious intentions, then you can use this to abuse, for abusive behavior, like stealing cryptocurrency, intercepting traffic, eavesdropping, maybe even, you know, attempting to get other networks offline completely. So that can have a real significant impact. And considering the fact, you know, that we depend on these online services, any service is being offered online nowadays, and the criticality and the dependency has grown in such dramatic form that the impact of incidents can be really severe. So I touched upon the malicious aspect, but I think most of the actually the incidents that happen are not necessarily because of bad intentions, but because of mistakes that are made in configuring sessions, in configuring filters, etc., etc. So one of the things, you know, in order to make routing more secure, is that operators need to verify the information, the routing information they receive from others, from the other networks they're connected to, their peers. So can you actually establish whether a prefix that has been announced that you received, has this been originated by the legitimate holder, or has it been tampered with? Has the AS path been tampered with, you know, with when it comes to the announcements you receive? And if you're able to validate that and not accept invalid announcements, that can prevent propagation of incorrect routing information, and that as such can also prevent certain malicious activity, at least the impact of it. So what about RPKI? RPKI stands for Resource Public Key Infrastructure. How does this potentially improve security, routing security? Well, what it basically does, it verifies or assures the association between number of resources that have been delegated to resource holders and the routing statements that can be made. So which autonomous system number is actually entitled to announce certain IP prefixes. Most of the time, resource holders will state their own autonomous system numbers and which prefixes they will be announcing. So if others do so, then that's not valid. But you can also say, well, someone else is entitled to, if you can cryptographically also make a statement that someone else, another autonomous system number, is entitled to announce certain prefixes of yours. But anyway, this proves in a cryptographical way the holdership. These statements that are made, they're called ROAs, Route Origin Authorizations. They are then used by others to validate the announcements they receive. So you receive a certain announcement from a peer of yours, and then using ROAs that have been created by others, you can download these, and these can be fed into your router in order to establish whether announcements you receive are actually correct in terms of the originating resource holder. And this then is also a stepping stone to what you would consider to be path validation, because I've been talking about RPKI in terms of origin validation. So it's actually a certain network entitled to announce a prefix, but there's more involved, and there's an AS path that I also earlier referred to. So how does it work? Basically, RPKI attaches a digital certificate to IP addresses and AS numbers. And these can then be used, you know, to authorize the use of resources and validate them. So with regard to the RAR, like the RIPE in CC. RPKI relies on the 5 RARs, the 5 global ones I referred to, as being the trust anchor. So it's a hierarchical structure. There's a trust anchor, and that as a regional internet registry will provide certificates to its resource holders, and they then can sign their resources, which are then called ROAs that I earlier referred to. So the end idea of this is that a global RPKI system, global because there are 5 RARs that serve their members, resource holders globally, this would enhance routing security. It's quite a powerful mechanism. It can prevent BGP hijacks, misorigination, so mistakes made when configuring BGP, as well as route leaks. It's currently used for the validating the origin autonomous system, as I referred to, but it's also a stepping stone to BGP path validation, where RPKI can also play a role. The thing is, however, but it is opt-in. It's not something that is mandated use of RPKI. So operators need to decide for themselves whether they use this or not, these technologies. And at the end of the day, if you really want a secure routing at a global level and have a real impact, then the more that join and use this technique, the more impact it will have. And it's a bit of a collective action problem, as I refer to, because initially when you start using it, it can be quite a hassle, a technical challenge to implement it. Things might go wrong, and it's not immediately visible what for yourself what the advantage of it is. So it really works if everyone does it. So these techniques have been around for a while. Currently, say, depending on which number you look at, 35 to 40% of internet address space is covered by RPKI. But again, you know, if more and more networks use it, then the impact of BGP hijacking can be significantly reduced, more than it is now. So when it comes to some numbers, I really quickly, rough and dirty, you know, some things I looked at. APNIC provides statistics and then gives you some, in terms of color, how far, you know, certain regions or countries have implemented RPKI. So when it comes to the authorization part, this is like on a global perspective, the color. But maybe more interesting, at least also for us, when we look at the RIPE stats, so then we at least know that we are looking at the numbers that we have ourselves, the RIPE NCC, so that when it comes to our own members, and in this case, the Russian networks, then it's also like close to 40% or a bit more than 40% of IPv4 space. In this case, it has been covered by ROAS. It's less for IPv6, it's around 10%. There might be a number of reasons for that, but looking at our IPv4 and also compare that to other countries, I think, you know, Russia is on the right track. It's also nice, you know, you can see a trend. There has been quite a spike leading up to 2020, and then the number is growing. So I guess that you guys are doing quite well. And this refers to delegated space, so space that has been allocated by the RIPE NCC to Russian networks, and it's not referring to actual space that is being announced and visible in the routing table, but it gives a good indication, I guess, of the trend. On a global scale, this is from an American website. When you look at looking at all the space covered by ROAS, and you look at it at everything that is announced and what is valid and what is invalid and unknown. Then you also see the numbers of valid statements. They're growing, and the not found, the unknown ones are becoming less. Well, obviously the invalid ones are a minority. That's a good thing, and the invalid ones, of course. The idea would be that if you use RPKI and you see that certain announcements are invalid, that you drop those, and if everyone does so, then they will not further propagate on the internet. So briefly, what the RIPE NCC is doing at the moment. Well, there are two angles, both on one hand the policy side of things, and on the other hand the technical. Well, from the policy side, it might be of interest, if you're not aware, looking at the RIPE NCC strategy for 2022 to 2026. RPKI is also one of the big topics. And we aim to operate a resilient, externally auditable and secure resource certification trust anchor. And I will go, in the technical part to some activities we're doing there. But also very important is that we focus on promoting the use of best practices for internet resources and standards, such as IPv6, and in this case, RPKI. And probably, this small talk is also contributing to that when reaching out to our Russian members and the Russian technical internet community. One of the things, we engage with a lot of stakeholders across our service region. We deal with public authorities. We deal, of course, with the private sector, with the operators, right? We give a lot of trainings. We've actually been quite successful in the Middle East, to get the numbers up. So that's a good thing. In terms of training, we have developed new routing security courses. You can take those physically, but also in the academy, online academy that we have, you can do them free and without any charge. So if you make an account there, then that might be useful to have a look at. And in terms of the physical ones or the online ones, that we do with a real trainer, always open, for requests if people would appreciate, a session, and we can always discuss that and organize something for you. In terms of outreach, when it comes to the topic of routing security, we are hosting a workshop at the Global Internet Governance Forum in October, focused at how to improve the adoption of routing security best practices and RPKI specifically. And there, we will deal with other stakeholder groups, from governments, from civil society, from the public-private sector operators, how to get to see what their different perspectives are on things, also from different regions, and how we can work together to improve this situation. So that was it for me. I'm slightly over time, but if there is some room for questions, I would be happy, to take them on board. So thank you very much for your attention.
Спасибо, Bastian. Пожалуйста, если
Thank you very much, Bastian. Do we have any questions to the speaker?
Thank you for your presentation, and a question about RPKI statistic. Does RIPE-NCC have any statistic that shows how the technology prevents BGP hijacks in real time, maybe with RIPE risk services? Thank you.
I cannot hear anything, so I don't know if...
Does RIPE-NCC have any statistics proving that RPKI can prevent BGP hijacking, for instance?
Well, statistics, I decided not to include. It's a good question. I decided not to include that here in the presentation, but I have some backup slides which are included in the slide pack that refer to a number of quite big incidents over the last couple of years that do demonstrate, the severe impact that this can have. And I was actually talking to to some Dutch government officials yesterday, and for them, I think it was in 2015, IP address space of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs was hijacked. And that gave them such a scare. And in order to avoid this in the future happening again, they stepped up and made the usage of RPKI mandatory for Dutch public authorities. So that's just a recent example, talking to people about that, that it can be a wake-up call, right? Like, it's not always visible in terms of, for end users that these type of incidents happen, and that's probably a good thing. And most of them are by mistake. But if something really severe happens, then it can have quite an impact, either in terms of when it's malicious intent, but also just systems breaking and certain services not being available anymore. So again, I refer to the additional slides I put in the slide back, and if any other questions, pop up there, then more than happy, if you can relay the questions and take them on board and have a follow-up discussion on that.
Thank you very much, Bastian. Okay, so let's move on. And our next speaker is Johan de Best with RIPE-NCC.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I will share my screen. Where is it?
Johan, я хочу
Can
напомнить.
you see my presentation?
I can, thank you.
Yes, everything's fine.
Okay, good, good. Hi, I'm Johan Terbeest. I am a senior software engineer on the RIPE Atlas team. I've been doing this for the last 10 years, which is almost the full lifetime of Atlas, but not quite. Today I'm going to give a short introduction to RIPE Atlas, what it is, what it does, why we built it, and also give you a quick update on some of the changes that we are going to make in the next 6 months to up to 2 years. So you have a little bit of an idea of the direction that we are taking. This is the map. As you know, hopefully, RIPE Atlas is a global measurement platform. So we are officially a global active measurement platform. The goal for RIPE Atlas is to make the internet reachability visible. So we are a topology network. We look at how you get from A to B on the internet. We are not looking at things like bandwidth or other issues. We are purely about are things reachable on the internet. RIPE Atlas uses probes, little hardware devices that are hosted by volunteers, and all the data that we gather is publicly available. So RIPE Atlas, as I said, it's a measurement platform. So what we create is measurements. We have 2 types of measurements. There are the built-in measurements. Those are measurements run by every single probe that is connected. And then we have the user-defined measurements, which you can run yourself if you host a probe. And then we also run some specialized measurements. For instance, we have anchors, which is a special type of probe. They run their own measurements, and that data is also available for you. So, as I said, we have probes and anchors. We have currently 12,000 probes connected, of which 800 roughly RIPE Atlas anchors. We collect 15,000 results per second currently, and we have 35,000 ongoing measurements running. We have many more short-term measurements. You can also run like a one-off measurement. There's many more of those, but 35,000 continuous measurements are running on the system. In addition to the 2 hardware types of probes, we also have the software probes, which is essentially a software package that works like a regular probe and can be installed on different machines. You can install it in a VM, you can install it on a router, on a server, pretty much anything can run it. Many people run it on a Raspberry Pi, for instance. We are supporting officially CentOS 8. That will become Oracle Linux in the future, but currently it's still CentOS 8. We will also officially start supporting Debian 9, 10, and 11. It will become packages on both of those systems. So it will simply be a regular install on how you install it in either CentOS or Debian. We have a Raspbian version. We have Docker images available. You can run it on a Turris router, for instance, as well. But those are not officially supported. So if you run into issues, you need the community to help you. Currently, we are out of hardware probes, and in general, for people in the Russian area, I would consider that you think about running a software probe if you are interested. It's been really difficult to ship probes to Russia in general, and currently we don't even have hardware probes available until January. So if you want to run a probe, please consider running a software probe. We'd really appreciate it. So if you want to create a measurement, for instance, why would you do this? Let's say that your problem is somebody cannot reach your server. And you get a comment, somebody says, I cannot reach your web server, and I'm in Germany, and it doesn't work. Then you can schedule measurements, pings, trace routes from probes worldwide to your server. So that is what makes Atlas unique, is that you can, from your own location, measure the connectivity as it is to any destination on the internet from anywhere where we have probes. And as you saw in the map in the beginning, the first slide that I showed you, we have probes pretty much worldwide. Where we have people, there will be probes. Other things you can measure is, for instance, packet loss on links. You can do an Anycast deployment. You can test DNS. You can test SSL connections, etc. There's lots of things you can test. To run your own measurements, we use a credit system. So every measurement costs a number of credits. Like one ping result is 10 credits, a trace route is 20 credits. We do this to make the system fair, so one person cannot easily overload the system. It also allows us to have a spending limit, that people cannot just do too much things. In general, it works well. It helps keep the system stable. So, of course, that means that you need credits if you want to run measurements. So how do you get those credits? There are several ways. You can host a RIPE Atlas probe. The moment that it's connected, it starts collecting credits. You get roughly 26,000 credits per day that it's connected. You can also get credits by being a RIPE NCC member. Every member gets 1 million free credits a month, regardless of whether they're hosting probes. You can host an anchor, which generates up to 5 to 10 times the number of credits of a RIPE Atlas probe. And if that is still not enough, you can also sponsor probes. You will get then the uptime credits from the sponsored probes added to your account. So an overview of what the credits look like. You see your balance, how many credits you have. You can transfer credits to other users. You can also share access to your credits, so other users can use your credits to create their measurements. Measurement results. If you create a measurement, this is a list of all the measurements that you have created in this particular case. So you can see that you created measurements to Wikipedia in this case, ping measurements, trace routes, etc. So the types that we have are ping, trace route, DNS, HTTP, SSL, NTP. Wi-Fi isn't really active currently, so that will be removed in a future version. And then the anchoring measurements, which is the mesh between the 800 anchors that we have. We have different visualizations available. So once you run your measurements, so you can see the RTT on a ping measurement, for instance. You can do that in a list. You can see that on a map, where you see the probes that are involved in the measurement and the RTTs that they have. Or you can use LatencyMon, which compares the trends of the RTT. So instead of seeing the current RTT, you can see how the RTT developed over time. Additionally, for trace routes, we have TraceMon, which is very similar to LatencyMon. It gives you the trend of how the traffic went from A to B. You can sort this by AS, you can sort this by country to get an idea of how your traffic went. Then we have IPMap. The example here is showing a trace route on a map, which is still possible, but IPMap is moving to an API-only service. So in the future, you're going to have to build your own visualizations on top of the data that we provide. DNS, similar. visualization. You can see on the map, you can see the response rates of the different DNS servers. When you create your own measurements, you can use the API or the website to download the data that it generated. Like I said, all data is publicly available, so every measurement you can download all the data yourself. You can set the time, so you don't have to get all the data for the measurement, because some measurements run for more than 12 years. That will be hundreds of gigabytes of data. So instead, you can set a time frame and say, like, for instance, I want only the data for the last day. We also have a part of the Web Atlas data is available on BigQuery, the Google platform, which allows you to use a more SQL-like query language to get data out of Web Atlas. The links are in the slide in case you are interested to use it. Additionally, we have a command line interface. So if you don't like using Web Atlas using the browser, you can use the command line. It's a Python tool. It runs on Linux and Mac OS X. There is a Windows version. It should run. It essentially allows you to run ping commands and traceroute commands, for instance, which give you an output that is very similar to the commands that most network engineers are used to. The CLI is completely open source. You can find all the documentation online, and tools are hosted on GitHub. Most people care about security of their probes. You don't want to put a probe in your network if it's not secure. So we make sure that the probes are very, very secure. They have, for instance, no open ports. They don't listen to your local traffic. They don't create any measurements unless you specifically tell them to create a measurement. The probes themselves connect to our infrastructure. And the way that works is that the probe is the one initiating the connection. So it's not possible to go from the outside to the probe. The probe has to come to us. So it's impossible to try to hack a probe from the outside. You will not succeed. In addition, all the measurement code, so the firmware that runs on the probe is publicly available if you want to check that. Here are some interesting links for you to follow if you want to read up more things about Web Atlas. So the future of Web Atlas, as I said, we've been running it for almost 12 years, well, about 12 years now. And we are currently making a lot of changes. The changes fall into two main categories: front-end changes and back-end changes. The front-end changes are that we're going to reconsider a lot of the stuff on the UX side. We want to simplify probe management. We might make it easier for you to transfer your probes and your measurements. So essentially take everything that you have and give it to someone else. We will make it available that you can request credits as a researcher through Web Atlas. So if you want to do research using Web Atlas, but you need millions of credits and you cannot possibly host that many probes to get those credits, you can request the credits from us. We will happily sponsor your research. And the UX will also make it available that you can request elevated permissions. A lot of researchers especially run into issues with permissions where we don't allow them in the default settings to use enough probes or get enough measurement results. Right now you have to come to us personally, but we'll make that more easily available to you. On the UI side, Atlas will become a real front-end web application that will also mean that all the promotional stuff will go away. It will purely be an app. That will also make it possible that it will run much, much better on a mobile device, whether that's a tablet or a phone. We are, for the first time in the life of RIPE Atlas, we are going to make a change to the backend data and how we store it. Currently, we have all the data from the beginning of time till now available in our HBase cluster. And that is effectively is not scaling right now. The different use cases where some people want to have the data from the last month, and other people want to say, I want to download hundreds of gigabytes of data from 2016, interferes with each other, and it makes the system unstable for everybody. So what we'll be doing is the data will be split into hot and cold storage. The HBase cluster will only contain the last month of data, which is what 95% of our users need. All the other data will be available using cold storage. From the API perspective and the website perspective, nothing will change. All the data is available the same way. No data will be deleted. It's just conceptually, you get it from a different location, essentially. We will also add many more APIs. This is mainly because of the overhaul of the UI. We need everything available in APIs now, which has the nice benefit that a lot more interesting stuff will be available in APIs than it used to be. And we're working on new measurements. For instance, soon we will have start TLS measurements, and we're also working on other more protocol related measurements. For instance, SNMP is something that is still being discussed, and most likely HTTP measurements will become publicly available soon. Other improvements is that we will extend the amount of built-ins that we run. Currently, like I said, we run mostly to root servers, some of the Atlas infrastructure, and a few other locations. We will start some measurements to common targets like Google, Facebook, and several of the most commonly used CDNs, which means that you don't have to run these measurements by yourself anymore. You can simply use the ongoing measurement. If you want to see how probes get to, let's say, the Google DNS, then you just have a measurement available for that. We're also going to overhaul the probe page to show more interesting things to the probe host. You can think here about things like the ISP that you're connected to will gather statistics on all the other probes that we know that connect to the same ISP, and is your probe connecting using the same quality of service that other people from the same ISP gets, things like that. We are also working on a new measurement creation page. The new version will be a lot faster, will have much improved probe selection, and also way better support for finding existing measurements. So if you type in, create a measurement, and we say, hey, we already have this, then we'll simply ask you, maybe you can use this existing measurement. You don't have to create your own. The measurement creation page will be available for beta testing by September 18. And we don't have a link yet. The link for the beta testers will be made available on our mailing list. There probably will also be a RIPE Labs article about it. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Спасибо, Йохан. Пожалуйста, вопрос.
Thank you very much, Johan. Do we have any questions? My name is Evgeny Kuskevich. I'm from RIPN. Johan, you mentioned that not only hardware probes, but also software probes are available. How about making a probe which looks like a mobile app for Android, for instance, and iOS?
An interesting question, and it's come up a lot. The main issue is that currently we assume that probes are connected as much as possible. We kind of want probes to be connected 24/7, and for things like running it on an Android phone or something like that, that won't, of course, be possible. It would, however, and this is why the question comes up, it would, however, be very interesting to be able to test cellular networks. So there is no technical limitation. There's no reason why we couldn't do it. We're just a little bit worried about getting an influx of potentially hundreds of thousands of probes that then essentially keep coming online, offline, and make the system a bit unstable if somebody else wants to run measurements. So it's something that we're thinking about, but in the current way that we use probes, it's not really feasible yet. But I'm not excluding it for the future. I hope that answers your question.
Спасибо, Johan.
Thank you, Johan. Well, there are no further questions. Thank you very much for being with us, and see you next time. Okay, now our next speaker. And who's our next speaker? It's going to be Dmitry Kovalenko. Hello, colleagues. My name is Dmitry Kovalenko. I'm with MSK-IX. I am in charge of DNS. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ICANN MOS API interface. So what is MOS API? It's an interface that stores data that is collected by the ICANN monitoring system that controls the service level of the domains that are registered under the ccTLD program, and also you can enable this monitoring for ccTLDs upon request. You can find additional information at their website, and MSK-IX offers several services for TLDs, including Anycast DNS, and upon agreement with registries, we have access to this API, so we can build reports on the basis of the collected data. And now to the main part of my presentation. There is an SLA matrix. It's part of the new GTLD agreement. The specification 10, it's mandatory for the registries that operate under the new GTLD program. And if the threshold value is exceeded, then certain procedures will be launched against the registry and the service. The data will be collected from data escrow. The data will be shared with the operator, emergency operator that will support the service in crisis for a while. Now, how does the distributed probe network of ICANN controls for these parameters? This network is located around the world, and we as a DNS operator are primarily interested in the DNS services, DNSSEC, DNS. Now let's take a closer look at this network and the measurements that it performs. For the measurement cycle to be considered a success, the minimum number of active testing probe nodes must participate in the test cycle. There are about 40 probes. That number changes all the time. So if 51% or more of the testing probe nodes see a monitored service as unavailable at a given time, the service will be considered unavailable, and the service will be considered down if 3 consecutive test cycles, 1 minute apart, have been unsuccessful. These numbers apply to the DNS services. For other services, the numbers or the values are slightly different. Now, you may be wondering where the probes are located. Most of the probes are in Western Europe. You can see that they are spread across different regions and continents. In Russia, there is just one probe. It's located in Moscow. In terms of the network topology, this is how it looks like. There's also IP addresses of the probes are located in 11 aliases. So you see that here we have about 10 unique organizations. Most of them are on the networks of large hosters at large hosting sites that geographically are spread out across the world. So this geography, this distribution enables the monitoring system to see about 2/3 of the MSK-IX platform network. Now, what about the other third? 1/3 of our DNS infrastructure that stays invisible is in Russia, and it has regional connectivity. Regional connectivity means that they are connected to a local IX, and it doesn't have access to the global internet. There is no IP transit happening on it. So, but to make sure we see the remaining parts, we use the self-testing network. The self-testing network is deployed at hosting providers that are located at the same hosting providers that host ICANN probes or somewhere close. And also we use our own offices, our own infrastructure in the Russian regions. So as a result, we get a network that looks something like that. And this network enables more informed reports. Here you can see joint locations, both of ICANN probes and MSK-IX probes. So I've added Russian regions onto the map. And so knowing this, we can better control our infrastructure. The self-testing network provides not only for control capabilities, but also enables additional diagnostics. In case of any incidents or issues, we can use trace routes to identify the bottlenecks, or we can measure the size of the DNS response, or we can do other analysis of the data coming from verified sources. As to more complicated cases, or if we need an even greater geographical representation, we use RIPE Atlas. They have an extensive number of probes around the world, and they provide wonderful functionality for additional diagnostics. So the data contained in MOS API are featured as JSON files. It's a text that's formatted as a JSON. This data is not very much analyzable, so we download the data, we store it in our database, and then we use the visualization tools to build our reports. Here on the slide to the left, you can see one such report. And on the right, you see this same report, but it's based on the data from MSK-IX probes. So one of them is MOS API, the other one is an MSK-IX report. And we share these reports with the interested parties. Now, here you can see the number of probes engaged in measurements at any given point in time. You can see the worst RTT for the cloud, for IPv4, and also IPv6. We have the same data for IPv6. That's it on measurements. But to conclude my presentation, just wanted to remind you that the MSKIX office offers services that might be interesting to TLD registries. These services are localized in Russia. We offer data escrow and Anycast DNS, and you can read more about these services at our website. Here is the QR code, and here are the links. Thank you.
Вадим Михайлов, Координационный центр.
Hi, I'm Vadim Mikhailov from ccTLD.ru. I've got 2 questions. So you are getting data from MOS API in real time, or there is some latency? So there is an SLA breach. What is the gap, the time gap between the incident and the time when you register it? We don't register incidents. There is a latency of about 5 minutes. So I'd say 2 to 5 minutes, depending on certain settings. And then it takes several minutes to verify the data. We use additional data not for monitoring purposes, but for analysis. Okay, another question. Were there any deviations between MOS API data and your network of probes data? Were there any deviations? Were there any mismatches between the data? No, well, our objective is not to replicate the data or reproduce the data that is collected elsewhere. Yes, we can send similar queries, but we aren't measuring second for second. We aren't measuring at the same time, and we are measuring on different parts of the network at any point in time. But no, I mean like a major contradiction or a major deviation. No, nothing like this. No, not really. So we have never tried to control one data with other data. If there is an outlier, then yes, there would be an investigation, but otherwise, no. Any other questions, colleagues? I have a question, if I may. You said that an SLA breach leads to Ibero initiation, a certain procedure initiation. So all these monitorings, we need them in order to understand whether this procedure needs to be invoked or, I don't know, did it ever use the Ibero procedure on anyone? Oh, well, there was one case, and probably it's the only one. And I remember it was in 2017. There was a .weddings domain issue. It was some service for newlyweds, and something went wrong there. And then they looked. As far as I remember, this domain is no longer on the TLD list. So probably this procedure was invoked, it was applied, and the domain was suspended. The comment is off the microphone and can't be translated. In the absence of further questions, Dmitry, thank you so much. And we are going to move to our next presentation, which will be delivered by Olga Baskakova from ccTLD.ru. Hello, colleagues, can you hear me? It'll take me a couple of seconds to share the screen. Please bear with me. I hope you can see the slides. No, not yet. No, you need to start displaying the slides. you know. F5, can you press F? Okay, now it's on. Everything's okay. Okay, it's better now. Wonderful. Well, usually I present domain security related projects, but now I'm speaking at the session that's dedicated to measurements. For me, it's an honor to be a panelist together with other technical experts. My presentation will be more down to earth, but I hope you will still find it curious.
Аристотель, движение — это жизнь. И когда мы перестаем двигаться...
Movement is alive. These are the words of Aristotle. And when we stop moving towards a new goal, we start to die in a slow death. No one wants to die. And I'm sure that most of the colleagues here are interested in domain statistics. It means that they visited at least once, but probably many more times. You visited the snat.dom.ru website. It was launched more than 10 years ago. It's now supported by the TCI because we are a technical operator for .ru, .rf, and .su. And the employees of the coordination center, myself included, we go to this website on a daily basis to look at the data. And there's lots of data available there in all kinds of dimensions, which is great. It's just that in recent years, we began to realize that to develop harmonically, we need to expand our perspective on the data and to evaluate the data from new perspectives, new points of view, and interpret them in new ways. So on this journey, we went through several iterations. In 2021, a monthly report for registrars was developed. And in 2023, we started getting new tools, from new reports that were based on registry database. And then we developed a huge, we started working on the new dashboard for visualization. We expect it to be launched in 2024. We are going to use a Yandex data lens, which is a well-known tool in Russia. We organized kind of a tender, and Yandex is in the Russian language, so it's already localized. And Yandex data lens is partially free, well, or conditionally free. Well, I mean, at first you can use it free of charge. But when your data sets grow, of course, it becomes a paid service. I will not discuss the tool itself, but instead I'm going to show you what can be done with the help of this tool, and what we are already doing it, since we need to understand how our registry and our domain space features versus other registries and domain spaces. We collect and review statistics on a global scale. We can see that compared to global trends, .ru and .ref are less volatile. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but this is what we see, and this is the information on which we rely in our work. Here you can see the map of how the domain names are spread across Russia. We have a similar map for the world, but now you're looking at the Russian regions map. The reports give us not just the total number of domains in different regions, but also the field of application, whether they are websites that are parked, websites used for redirect, etc. So this is another important bit of information. An even more useful map and an informative map is the heat map of growth in the regions. Access to the statistics that helps you assess the growth rates in different regions allows us to assess performance of our marketing campaigns. You just by taking a glance at this map, you immediately see how efficient your marketing campaigns are in different regions. We also need to understand the role and the weight of the registrars in our domain name system and the dynamics of their performance. And that's why we collect and process statistics on the distribution of domain names across registrars. On this slide, you can see the bars. This diagram shows us the total number of domain names in the zone and top 5 registrars, and the share of the total number of the domain names that belongs to each registrar. And a similar chart, but this time it looks differently. It's a different visuals, because we know that different people prefer different types of visualization. So it's very easy now to visualize the data in a couple of clicks in a new way. Now, on the registrars. We want to understand our registrars better since they are our clients. That's why we produced reports to evaluate the domain names belonging to each registrar by category. In data.ref, most of the domain names are registered by individuals, not organizations. But registrars all have different business models. Of course, we were aware of this in the past, but now we just not simply know it, we can prove it. And we can also observe the dynamics, the changes in the customer base of the registrars, and the split of the shares of individuals and organizations. And you can also compare how different registrars use the domain names. We know, we do not just assume, we know how the registrars are developing their business models. We know who their customers are and what are the purposes of their customers, because some people use the domains for websites, others use domains to park them. It's important that we know it, again, in order to target our marketing campaigns better and to develop some customized proposals or offerings to different registrars to promote the domain names in our domain zones. Of course, in addition to those indicators and metrics, like the type of use, we also collect data on the basic indicators like the number of registrations, delegations, removals, suspensions, whatever. It's very easy to collect and assess this data. The total number of domain names, the total number of registrations is shown on the graph, and the different types of transactions with the domain names per registrar. Over here, you can see the charts on reg.ru. It's the largest Russian registrar. And you can tell that its share in total number of transactions is very high. This is general statistics for the domain zone. The number of registrations of the domain names, this is monthly dynamics, and also you can look at the data by years. Now in 2023, the performance is higher than in the previous year. And according to our forecast, 2023 will be much more productive than 2022. On the next slide, you can see the dynamics in the number of registrations. That's registrations, removals of the domain names, and total growth in the .ru zone. From this graph, you can tell that, again, 2023 has been growing with positive numbers. We have been growing since the start of the year.
Привычные, может быть, в чем-то предсказуемые графики, А на последних двух слайдах я вам хочу
So
показать
what you've seen so far was not surprising. These are standard reports, standard charts. And now I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite reports. It's our know-how. This is the data that we started collecting a few years back. This is analysis of our domain space depending on the weights of the registrants. We need to know our clients, and not just the registrars, but also the end users, the registrants who register the domain names we consider to be our clients. We need to understand who are these people and why they register domain names, what are their objectives. Most of the domains are registered by the users that have 1 to 10 domains, which is only to be expected. Well, the majority of the registrants register 1 or 2 domain names. That's half of all the zone. And the remaining half of the zone is distributed between the players who have different weights. We started gathering these statistics in 2014 when the rule zone went into decline. We needed to investigate the reasons for this downwards trend. And here you can see the different dynamics in different categories of the registrants. In 2017, for example, in DataView and DataRef, the prices were reviewed, the prices were increased, and as a result, this led to prolonged decline in the number of registrations, and mostly this decline was driven by the domainers, by the registrants who had anywhere between 500 and 1,000 domains registered. In 2022, it was not a growth in one category and a decline in a different category, but rather there was a migration from one category into another. Some users who held large portfolios made these portfolios even bigger, and many of these registrants stopped being large registrants and became very large registrants. In 2023, we see growth across all categories of our registrants, which makes us very happy. So this brings my presentation to the close. If you have any questions, please ask them. And in any case, you know how to contact me. Questions, please? Olga, on two slides, there are a couple of outlines. It's a registrar. Yeah, one of the largest registrars. I know what you are talking about. It's a registrar who we love dearly. This registrar has a peculiar business model, which is not its sales names.ru, which is quite well, their business model corresponds to the rules. It doesn't violate the rules. Sale names is the largest of the registrars that focuses on domains for parking. There are other registrars like this, but I just wanted to demonstrate that there are indeed various business models out there. That's why we gather this data to understand the differences between the registrars. If they were all the same, it would be quite boring. I could have shown you just one graph. And yes, I'm here. Well, Pavel is setting up his presentation, and your slides. Oh, well, your slides are wonderful, but the intelligence that you have is even more exciting. I understand how much work goes into it, but in practical terms, I mean, how do you use the output of your intelligence? Well, in practical terms, for for us to be able to use these data in practice, for instance, to build our financial plans, we need to understand the trends. We need to see where the zone is moving. Do we need to plan for growth, or do we need to plan for a decline? What are your plans, Olga? Is your system fully done? Well, no, actually, I'm currently preparing a specification for the developers. I want them to design a dashboard for the data. I hope very much that already this year we'll be able to produce some visualization and to automate data processing. The graphs that I demonstrated, they are today they are built using Yandex data lens, and we do it with our hands. It's all manual work. But in general, I plan to build a big portal. Oh, that's my dream. I want there to be a big portal for the registry employees so that they can decide on marketing strategy to build trends for the budgeting process. And as a next step, some of this portal can be opened to registrars, because right now we compile monthly reports for the registrars and we do it again with our own hands. This is all manual, and this takes a lot of time. And as a third step, the plans further down the line. Maybe this portal can also be made available to the registrants. It's a lot of work. Yes, indeed, it's a lot of work. And the more I do it, the bigger the project becomes. Yes, there is a comment from the floor. I also wanted to add something to Olga's comment. Why are we doing this? Well, you see, whenever we see some fluctuations, maybe a growth or a reduction in the number of domain registrations, we need to understand why this is happening. What are the root causes? Are all registrars suffering, or is it just 1, 2 registrars that are affecting the dynamics of the whole market? So it's not like they are absolutely new sets of data, but instead we would like to present the data across new dimensions and the new cross sections. We'd like to for the data to be analyzed in a more granular way. But these trends, do you see that the local trends correspond to the international trends? Have you carried out analysis like this? Yes, of course. I collect statistics for the main ccTLDs during many years. Well, sometimes that are UN data follow global trends, sometimes they don't. Yes, but I think it would be interesting to examine the reasons why some ccTLDs are growing, others going down. Yes, exactly. This is our ambition too. Okay, thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. But now let's move to our final speaker of the session.
Что-то как-то, да, не мой день.
The day didn't start to a good start. I got into a traffic jam. Now we lost the presentation. Well, anyway, we found it. It's back. Anyway. Now, if you want to find out which DNS resolvers the end users are using, this is how you approach the task. What is a resolver? I think everyone knows, but just to remind everyone, here on the picture in the center, we have the resolver that searches over DNS. It's a distributed information system, and a resolver is a search tool that looks for information in this distributed system. It's quite a simplistic scheme. It's much more complex in reality, but anyway, the IP address of a DNS server is uploaded, is received, is the server of the resolver in which it can operate. Things are much more complex today. Sasha made a presentation yesterday. It could be a public resolver for AIDS. It could be a provider's resolver. It could be a DNS provider resolver. There are many different options and scenarios, but when the dot appeared, the colleagues from APNIC decided to test in the context of the internet segmentation to test what it is that end users are using, which resolvers are they using. This is an outsider's look. This is how AppNIC sees it. This is your standard layout. The user uses the resolver of its own provider, the end user, and the resolver are in the same autonomous system. Another possibility is when a resolver belongs to a different AS, not the AS of the end user. For instance, these two autonomous systems in the Russian database are labeled as Russian, well, labeled. Basically, Yandex autonomous system could be located in Finland, but still in the RIPE database, it would still be marked or labeled as Russian. So all this geo-labeling and the rest of it, it's a big unresolved issue. Anyway, different countries can be labeled in the RIPE database as different countries. And then another scenario is when the user's AS is one country and the resolver AS is in another country, and they will be labeled accordingly. Can we go back? No, stop there. Another scenario is you can have a public resolver. A public resolver can be located in the same country as the user, or it can be outside of the user's country. This is a schematic from AppNIC Labs testbed. It's the measurement platform that they use to identify the resolvers that are used by the end user. So basically, it's a combination of two protocols, HTTPS and the DNS protocol. So I say Google. At Google, a script is published. It's uploaded from the HTTP server of AppNIC. So they see the proxy's IP address or the end user's IP address, and they record the IP address in the database. And the script calls the DNS resolver, and this DNS resolver calls the authoritative AppNIC server And the APNIC on the authoritative server, they see the IP address of this resolver, and the end user's IP can then be associated with an AS, and the resolver is associated with its AS, and in the database, they see the match. Again, different possibilities are, other scenarios are also possible here, but this is how APNIC labs operate. This is the global view. You see nothing happening much. The blues, the yellows, the reds at the top. They are the same autonomous system. The speaker is not using the microphone. Okay, next. Can you press the button, please? And this is how Russia looks like. Something happened in February last year. You can tell that something happened. We're not going to discuss what exactly happened, but something happened. And then things changed. And then look at the bottom chart. Look at this graph. Because of the events of February last year, the number let's put it different. The traffic that goes to APNIC sensors or servers diminished significantly by an order. And then there is a lot of volatility in this graph because the input volume of data is very small. First, we see public DNS resolvers. Then they were going down. Their share started to go down. And the AS is going up. Maybe this is happening because the, say, Google and APNIC associate IPs using a different methodology. The sensors work differently, although it's the same autonomous system, or maybe the same autonomous system. Roskomnadzor, the Russian supervisor, blocks resources. Here are 53 domain names that were blocked on this day. So yeah, you can see torrents there. Some social networks are not very popular, but nothing much out of the ordinary, right? Can you click it one more time? In fact, say Google as an advertising site, it's stayed as it was. Not much changed for Google. These are the queries, and you see all the data are the same. If you look at this traffic from inside Russia. But in the press release, Google wrote something like this. Google suspended ads from Russian state-owned media outlets. So on the 27th, and the press release came out officially on March 3rd, it says that Google stopped advertising to Russia. It stopped broadcasting advertisements to Russia. Hence, these results from APNIC, and then how reliable, how accurate. Well, not accuracy really. That's not the right word. The data is accurate, but is this data representative? And can we use this data anywhere? Can we use the data to analyze the residual traffic? Probably. But if you want to understand what Russian users are actually using, which resolvers they are addressing, this data is no longer representative. You need to look for data elsewhere. Next.
картинка, это та же самая автономная система, Google, Яндекс. Кстати, Яндекса статистика.
Same picture here, Google, Yandex. Appnik doesn't include the Yandex into its statistics, like Russian users aren't using Yandex. So Appnik considers that Yandex's public resolvers are not used in Russia, which looks weird, to say the least. In fact, MSKIX shared some data with Indata for research. We looked at the public log of MSKIX, and according to Indata, obviously the original data sources is not us, but according to this data, we've got 5,851 ASs in Russia. As to MSKIX public resolvers for all projects taken together, we see that they received queries from 3,584 ASs, so that's quite representative. The percentage is pretty high. The top resolvers in Appnik are only 136 ASs, so the graphs that you saw, they are based on the data from only 136 ASs. The match between Appnik data and MSK data is 111 ASs. 111 ASs are the same in MSKIX and Appnik data. So basically, MSKIX sees quite a share of what Appnik is seeing. Public resolvers service 23 plus billion queries a day, which is, again, quite a representative number. In fact, in .ru, this is what Baskakova showed before me. We have the statistics. In .ru, we've got about 10 billion queries a day to authoritative servers. 10 billion. If in reality it's 100 billion, not 10 billion, but if the data sees 23 billion, that means a quarter of all these queries. On the arcane blacklist, Roskomnadzor, the Russian supervisor, on this blacklist, we know that from this blacklist, we know that 522,000 domains are blocked. In terms of universal acceptance, by the way, only 386,000 can be converted in UTF-8, and everything else is just, they are coded and can be recoded into UTF-8. So the question is, what is blocked actually, and what is not truly blocked? It's a very busy slide, but you should be interested in the lines that are high and yellow. The traffic is pretty high. This AS, we have it in the MSK IX statistics and in Appnik statistics. But in Appnik, it will be a tiny AS. They wouldn't see many of its queries to the public resolver, but here you can see zeros. It means that the advertising module that's broadcast to Appnik, their advertising module, out of this number of queries, zero reach that module. It may happen for different reasons, because Google is not displaying it, maybe because it's done via apps that block advertising, but the size of traffic that Appnik ignores is quite high. And this is the last slide of the presentation. People say that it's a quote from Mark Twain, but in fact, it's a quote that belongs to someone else. There are three kinds of falsehoods: lies, damned lies, and statistics. Whenever we work with data, you have to ask yourself a question. Is the data applicable? Is it relevant? Is the data representative? And the third question is, do we have enough? Well, Dima was sharing a story on mass IP. If you look at the measurement methodology, you'll read that it says that there should be at least 20 probes to confirm that the network is etc., etc. But so you have to have enough measurements to ensure that the data is relevant. That's it. Very well, Pavel. Thank you very much. It was a very informative presentation. Thank you. Our session has come to an end. The colleagues are still available. They're here. They aren't going anywhere. So if you have any questions, please find them during the coffee break. Thank you very much and see you in half an hour.
Ну что ж,
So
продолжаем.
we are already online. We are back. Thank you and welcome to the 16th International Conference for ccTLD registries and registrars of CIS Central and Eastern Europe. Welcome to session 6, perhaps the most interesting session of the whole conference. We have assembled here a panel of competent organizations, and we'll be talking about the markets. We'll be talking about the current trends around fishing mainly, and then we will also see whether the number of resources targeting users or specific marketplaces is growing, or maybe it's not growing. And then we'll talk about the techniques used by criminals, how easy it is to enter the market to the new attackers, and we will also discuss the methods of countering the attacks and crime, and maybe we'll organize a discussion on this topic in the second part of the session. Let me introduce our speakers. We've got with us Evgeny Pankov. He is leading projects at Coordination Center. We also have Kirill Myakishev, Director of Information Security at the Ozone Marketplace. Dmitry Kiryushkin is the Bizone brand protection lead. Stanislav Goncharov represents FACT. He is Business Development Director in the Department of Digital Risks. FACT is the same as Group IB, actually, formerly known as Group IB. And we are going to also have the representative of large registrars, Rosent and Regu, Marina Brig. So I suggest that we start without further ado. The microphone goes to Evgeny Pankov and his statistics. Good afternoon, colleagues. Let's wait for the slides to appear on the screen. And in today's talk, I will share with you the statistics that we've been collecting through Domain Patrol. This is the project of the Coordination Center of the ccTLD.ru that aims at preventing and disrupting threats online. I will be sharing with you some phishing cases. And somewhere around my last slide, I will pose a question that perhaps will provoke a discussion. There are 12 competent organizations that cooperate with the ccTLD.ru in the framework of the Domain Patrol. You know them very well, they need no introductions, and we as a registry signed a contract or an agreement with them in order to prevent and disrupt threats online. So under the rules, all competent organizations have the right to send a request or a complaint to the registrar, and then the domain will be suspended or delegated. Why phishing? Because in the last several years, phishing has become a leading trend, and the volume of phishing grows year on year. Here you can see the main subcategories of phishing, including classical phishing, which usually means mailings, telephone phishing, or phishing, and then there is also complex phishing, which started to prevail around the end of 2019, and maybe today it's the most common type of phishing these days. On the slides, I will have statistics for this year and the last year. Here you can see the number for 2022. In 21 and in 2020, the number was much lower, and phishing grew at a rate of about 40% year on year. We see growth that by the end of 2022, in the fall of 22, has accelerated. And at the bottom of this diagram, you can see the percentages and the brands that are the most likely targets of attacks. In previous years, these brands' share in the total number of attacks was much lower, around 20-25%. This is data of 2022. This is the data till August. You can see the number is already higher than in the previous year, and the percentages are also very high. Sometimes it's 80-85%. So there are 10 or maybe 12 top brands that come under attack much more often than others.
Здесь схема по брендам. Вот то, что я говорил с конца
This
лета.
is again the same statistics by brand. We saw a dramatic increase in the volume of complex phishing since summer last year. Sberbank, Ozon, BlaBlaCar, Booking, and Alpha Bank are in they make up the top 5. Neither Avito nor Yula are in the top 5, which is quite peculiar. This is data for 2023. You can see that Avito and Yula have come under attack more prominently.
Брендом с чем связано? Ну, возможно, еще коллеги расскажут.
What the reasons are for this growth? Well, maybe my colleagues are going to talk about it more. I guess the reason is in the vulnerability of these sites and in the fact that their sites are easy to penetrate. Even if you look at Ozon in 2022, Ozon was higher, its curve was higher than the curves of these brands. Now Ozon is going down. Probably Ozon worked with the users, with the customers. As an Avito customer myself, I can see that users do not have enough information how to behave under various circumstances.
Telegram можно так не брать, потому что в 22 году практически.
These are growth percentages. Telegram in 22, there were very few complaints. And again, we are looking at the domain patrol statistics, let me remind you, because there are other ways to complain, other channels of communication. But here we can see grand growth. Yula and Avito, you can see that they surged at the same time. Steam community and BlaBlaCar are displaying a negative trend. I remember the time when BlaBlaCar, around 2020, maybe 21, was one of the leaders, and now at the end of the year, BlaBlaCar will be the only brand that will not set a new record. As to the response time, at the end of 22, we faced a problem due to a large number of requests. The system was not ready to accept that many tickets. And although at the end of 22, the average time of response was about 25 hours, in the first months of 23, here you can see how many of the complaints were processed within the first 12 hours. Between 12 and 24 hours, you can see that 24 plus, that percentage prevailed over 12 hours or 24 plus hours. But we worked hard, we analyzed the statistics, and the decision was made to change the procedure. Already in May, we improved the domain system information system, domain patrol, sorry. And in the 3 months of the summer, we can see that the share of the complaints handled within the first 12 hours has significantly increased. So the first, without the first 3 months of the year, you will see that even compared to the previous year, we are doing much, much better. We are processing the claims much better. The average figure for the year will be around 26 hours, I guess, but we are very happy to have achieved those numbers, and we're also happy to meet with the response of the wrongdoers. You know, the fraudsters are worried, they are not happy at all. In fact, they are concerned about how quickly the registrars are responding and undelegating the domains. They generate phishing links, but then they see that the domain is no longer active. I read the communication of the fraudsters, and I see that they are not happy at all. Now let's consider different types of phishing. The telephone phishing is known as vishing or voice phishing. The idea is to steal the banking data from the users. The fraudsters pose as representatives of gossuslugi or as representatives of banks and law enforcement authorities. I receive those calls myself. Very often they would be calling via messengers and, like gossuslugi or spare avatar would be uploaded to the profile. And of course, this is already confusing, especially for the seniors. My parents call me myself, and they complain that they are receiving those calls.
Также к вишингу, это вот мошенники вообще, они молодцы.
The criminals, they're smart people often. They're quite ingenious. During the zero stage, I mean, you all received calls from law enforcement authorities, from the police officers, and we know how to behave, but there is also the zero stage that they devised. It's funny because you are receiving a call either from a relative or from a colleague, and they say that, hey, you will be getting a call from a police officer in a minute. I don't have time to talk to you, to explain everything, but please take that phone call and answer their questions. Well, I would disregard such a request myself, but I think that many people will actually be misled by this information if it comes from your colleague or someone you know. Or sometimes the fraudsters are already using audio deepfakes so that you can, get a call from your relative. People are fooled into thinking that they are receiving instructions from a trusted individual, from a mom or a friend or children. And there are many people who get hooked on this trick. But the idea is eventually to get hold of the victim's money. This is another interesting scheme that's been progressing recently. Recently, that means since the start of the pandemic, since 2019, when many people went online, and the fraudsters, of course, abused that online presence. A complex phishing is when a domain name, usually a well-known brand, becomes part of a large-scale phishing campaign. A link is generated, and the content is available for a limited period of time, and it targets a specific victim. Usually, they are customers of large marketplaces. How does it work? In the past, special websites would be set up, and the criminals would be exchanging experience there. They would explain to each other how to work with phishing, how to fool the victim. Now things have become much simpler. This is not a new scheme anymore, but I myself encountered the scheme personally by accident. I noticed that the client writes to us, to the support, and sends us phishing links. I've been, talking to this. I started talking to this person. I posed as someone who's not competent in this area, and he said that, "Hey, it's very long for me to explain everything. Let me send you a link to the chat bot, and you'll see for yourself." So again, you don't need to be an expert. It's all quite simple. You select a brand. You select who you're going to be, a seller or a buyer. Here, let's say that we have a fraudster who's fooling a seller of a phone at their Vito website. In the chatbot, the fraudster selects a domain. And I see when, these people are really worried when the domain names are no longer available. But okay, anyway, they will open up a new domain. So as a fraudster, I enter my name. As a buyer, I enter the delivery address. Then a link is generated, a link to a product, and the link is generated, right? Then the fraudster starts communicating with the seller, asks the seller to continue the dialogue in the messenger, and then in the messenger, the fraudster sends a link to the seller follows the link, and it says, "Congratulations, you have a buyer, and the buyer has already paid for the product." So you enter your bank data, and you click this receive button, and then you also see the chat. If the seller has doubts, in the chat, they can confirm that everything is correct. But if you go to the original Avito page, I mean, if the seller is notified that the product is sold, or if there is a buyer for the product, the Avito doesn't offer a special messaging window. No, it's just not available. But here there is an even chat, and you will be assured that everything is fine. And the fraudster will be receiving information about every action taken by the sellers.
Зачастую сейчас компетентная организация использует также ссылки с описанием этой схемы для, после...
At the fact company website, you can find a very good, a very detailed description of this scheme. So here, the seller enters the banking details to collect the money, and the fraudster is notified via the chat. So the fraudster receives not only the money, but also all the information on the credit card of the victim. This is the statistics. It's the statistics that they collect throughout the day. This is how much they make in a day. There is a hierarchy: who's making more, who's making less. There is a top 10 fraudsters. There is a rating. Yeah, they publish this information all the time. And for instant payments, they use bank accounts and phone numbers, all of them quite legitimate. And we know that to open a bank account, you must produce a regional ID. So all the people whose IDs were used in the process might be implicated in the scams. Well, and this is the last slide that I mentioned, the slide with a question mark. Everyone here, people in the room, users, coordinated registrars, law enforcement offices, we are all links in the same chain. What else can we do? So this is the question that I would like us to discuss during the session. How can we connect all the links in the chain? How can we make the life of the criminals even more difficult? I'm an optimist. I understand that fraud is eternal, perhaps, but can we complicate things for the fraudsters even further? Thank you. Thank you very much, Evgeny. It was very interesting. I have a question. Maybe it's not a question for now, but for later. But if there is a newcomer to the fraud community, if someone wants to join, would they know they're joining the criminal activity? Well, I think they know. I believe that, of course, they understand that what they're doing is illegal. Besides, there is a Philippines website, and also new ccTLD domains are used to publish instructions, to brief every member of this gang of fraudsters. They even share scripts like what do you say? How do you behave? Of course, these documents never say that from now on you become a member of a gang of fraudsters. Well, I would love to attend one of their conferences. Would be quite curious. No, really, if you know how to read, you read the manual, and then you will be able to generate a fraudulent link in just a minute and a half. I just wanted to test the manual, and it worked. It took me a minute and a half. And besides, all the instructions on the manual are in Russian. Okay, thank you very much, Evgeny. Thanks. Very well. Then let me give the floor to the representative of a marketplace, Kirill Mekishev from Ozon. Will share Ozon's perspective on fraud. Hi, hello everyone. Yes, I wanted to explain how we detect the scams and who helps us fight those scams. And before I start, let me offer my point of view on the question that you asked. What is still missing? What can we do to eradicate fraud? Well, I agree that we'll never be able to eradicate it completely, but those people who work in companies and protect the companies from crime, I think what we can do is to ensure that the cost of the attack is prohibitive, that is higher than any benefit or profit that can be obtained via this attack. So we must make phishing cost inefficient. We want criminals to earn less than they are spending on setting up their attacks. Ozone is number one in MAUs, more than 65 million people among all e-commerce sites. At the end of July, we had 40 million active buyers, more than 250,000 sellers, and more than 25 million clients at Ozone Bank. Those who open the card and are paying for goods at least at Ozone, maybe somewhere else too. What do we block and how do we do it? Stanislav and I, we published a big, our two companies actually, we published a joint press release a couple of days ago, and it concerned with the phishing sites that we blocked in 2023. There are three main categories of the blocked assets. There are phishing sites, there are scam sites, and there are messages in messengers and social media. The messages and messengers and social media are falling year on year. At the same time, there is 100 times growth of phishing websites. Now, the explanation was provided in the previous presentation. To set up a phishing site, I don't need to be an IT expert. I just need to go to a chatbot, click a couple of buttons, and any housewife, should she wish to do it, she can read the instruction in Russian and become a fisher. As it's really a service that you can use these days. The common fraud schemes. To the right, you can see screenshots from those fraudulent websites. Well, to the right, actually, it's more like scam. It's you are participating in a prize drawing. You win something. We carried out a survey among our customers in spring 2023, and this is the statistics. Every second respondent experienced fraud. 1/3 of the Russians lost more than 5,000 rubles because of fraudsters, and 74% of the users at the same time are aware of the digital security rules. But if you compare the first two answers with the third answer, it means that some of those who were aware of the rules, still fell victim to the criminals. It means that we as a marketplace and colleagues, as the company providing online security, government agencies and others, we are not doing enough to raise the awareness in the general public. Now, how do we do it? How do we detect phishing? How do we counter it? Well, first of all, we are customers ourselves. That's to say, people working at Ozone and at other companies, we are trying to do our own investigations. We are trying to discover those links in our information space ourselves. We also cooperate with our clients. We have an extensive customer support service, and every complaint related to fraud or a suspicion of fraud is always escalated to us, And then we will escalate this complaint, this report to colleagues, and then the colleagues will share it with the domain patrol. Again, we cooperate with colleagues from FACT, and they use their own methods and tools to detect these resources in the internet. So what do? We block the websites. For us, that means, for us, it would look like blocking a website, but for you, it means a comprehensive process of undelegation, maybe some other transactions too. What else is there? Well, as I was saying, our task is to make the cost of the attack prohibitive for the attacker. The cost of the attack will be high if one-time passwords are used. Everyone knows what a two-factor authorization is, but it's a one-time password, really, that you receive every time you enter a website of a marketplace or a bank or some other entity. So a page that offers only a login and a password, to hack this site is much easier than to hack a website that offers two-factor authorization. So you have to intercept the password and then enter it on the real web page. So again, to counter phishing, it's important for us to switch our services, all of our services, to Ozone ID. Ozone ID is the service that uses a one-time password. And of course, we are engaged in outreach activities, and we try to raise the information security awareness among our employees, among our colleagues, among our suppliers, among our customers, everywhere. On the website, you can find a lot of materials, papers, entertainment materials, even on how to differentiate the real Ozone site from a fake Ozone site. What phishing is, how to prevent phishing, etc. So we are communicating all this information to our customers and partners. Here are some examples. To the right, you can see our website. There is gamification there. You have to take a guess where the real Ozone is and where we are showing a fake Ozone site. Then you can see also the screenshots from our internal messengers. We are promoting, hygiene, basic rules of information security. We are educating our employees as to how to identify phishing. It's especially important at the points of delivery. It's very important because lately we have seen a rise in the cases of phishing that targets not our customers, but our employees who work at delivery points. So for us, the damage may take the form of hijacking the account of our employee. So before we had Ozone ID in the interface of the order handover, the criminals would hijack our employee's profile in order to intercept goods or money, and we were losing stock. Really, we were losing the products, we were losing the goods, because we still have to pay the actual seller who delivered the product to our point of delivery, and then we'll lose those products at the point of delivery. And those digital fraudsters, they become not just digital, but physical fraudsters. Thank you. Thank you, Kirill. Well, this last message that you had, that was quite interesting. I have, like when fraudsters convert from online to offline, I have a question about two-factor authorization. Those SMS, those text messages with the code, I'm not happy with them as a user. I would like, well, let's take Ozone as an example. I would like to use privacy ID of the code generator, right? I have it. I'm using it for Kentucky and other places. There is two-factor authorization that I trust. So, what prevents you? Do you think it will make the customer's life more difficult? What prevents you from implementing real two-factor authorization? Well, if you're asking about OTP, then yes, we had an internal discussion around that when we did strategic planning of security of Ozone ID. We gave it a thought. We asked ourselves whether one-time TLTP password would be a good idea for our customers and partners, and we saw that the clients were not really interested. There are few people like you, very few. So we are not ready to invest. But as soon as, like with this two-factor authorization, make the life of the fraud more difficult, the fraudsters will switch to a new technique. They will start sending out text messages. You know, it's very easy. It's virtual SIM cards now from a telecom operator. So maybe at the next turn of the curve, the fraudsters will start sending out fake text messages. Well, we try to align with big banks and other marketplaces in respect of this trend. Today, two-factor authorization is a golden standard. Well, this is a good answer. I accept it. Will we be able to use TLTP sometime in the future? Well, yes, probably will never become mandatory though. And most of our users, our customers who are not very sophisticated in security matters, they will stay with the current means of authorization, and the fraudsters will work against them rather than those who made their own life more difficult by using a more sophisticated method of security. Thank you very much. That was Kirill Megish from Ozone. Then I'll give the floor to Stanislav Goncharov from FACT. Yeah, sure. Wonderful. I'm glad I have to go first. It's just that Evgeny's presentation was so detailed and it gave you a good idea of the scam and the scheme. And yesterday, colleagues from Rostelecom also shared a lot of cases. Thank God I only added one case, but it's a different one from the ones that you presented. I also wanted to make another remark regarding scam gangs. So again, thank you for reading our reports, and I recommend that everyone familiarize themselves on the reports with the report on the gangs. It's not a long paper. It will take you 3-5 minutes maybe, but you will be able to understand the scheme, the hierarchy. The hierarchy is quite extensive. It has about 10 different avenues or roles in addition to workers who do all the hard work. There is also support. There are topic starters. There are those who develop the Telegram channels. There are also managers of scam groups. And there are more than 300 gangs like this at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. And this Kirill's joke about housewives who can do it anytime. Well, this is exactly what happens. It's just that they are not usually housewives. Mostly they are school children. And to answer a different question, whether people understand that they become cyber criminals, well, not exactly. I think that they believe themselves to be businessmen, young businessmen making money. So by the age of 20, they think that they will be renting an apartment, Moscow City, and driving expensive sports cars.
Вот. Ну, в общем, дальше пойдем по презентации.
Anyway, fact. Fact, probably it's not obvious for everyone. Fact stands for Fight Against Cybercrime Technologies. Our portfolio of products and services extends not only to classical cybersecurity and protecting corporate infrastructure, but we are offering services to protect the internet users, to protect the brand of copyright holders and content. I'm a business development manager in fact, and in my presentation, I'm going to share some statistics on phishing in .ru and .rf. It's curious to compare the statistics in different slides. We all have some numbers, and the numbers do differ, but the trends seem to be the same across all presentations. Here you can see the trend, or the numbers rather, between January and August this year in .ru and .rf zones. We responded to all these incidents. It's just that when you compare this against the data in press releases of Ozone or Stoloto or other rights holders, we are sharing just the data on domains. They are domain only, not URLs. Of course, if you count URLs, the numbers would be quite different. Here you can see about 10,000 domains blocked by us between January and August. Evgeny, in his statistics, I think he quoted, 33,000 domains? 33,000? So 1/3 of those were blocked by, were referred to by us, and thanks to the domain patrol, we undelegated these domains successfully. The important thing is that these domains are all in the Russian domain zone, and they're all related to phishing. Why is this important? Well, there is also scam. There is scam. And we can't respond to scam together with the domain patrol, and it's something that I would like us to discuss at the end of the presentation as to who the victims are. Again, they are online services, delivery services, and financial institutions. It's the same top three. The statistics, the numbers change all the time, and some of these industries sometimes would go to the top, sometimes they will go down, but payment services and bookmakers, for instance, they are today somewhere at the bottom. So the school children, and not just the school children, they follow a specific path. They do it knowingly. They understand that the Russian brands participating in import substitution, replacing the foreign brands that left. They have become more attractive, and they are attracting now more customers in Russia and the CIS, and at the same time, they are the ones selected as victims. They are the ones whose brands are abused and whose content is abused. If we talk about roughly 10,000 domains that were blocked in the .ru zone, well, in total, the Russian brands, and I'm talking about Russian brands, we saw about 200,000 phishing sites posing as famous Russian brands. In the .rf zone, I was trying to find this data before the presentation, and it was about 50 domains that I found. So less than 1% out of 5% of the total number of phishing pages detected. Now to the cases. Well, again, my colleagues presented many of the cases, and I also recommend reading about those cases on our website in our multiple reports. But out of the phishing domains, a certain percentage targets Telegram users, about 2,000 domains that we detected and blocked were targeting Telegram users. In June and July, there was a surge there because the attacks were related to voting. The voting, such as my niece is participating in the Russian competition of music. So can you please support her? Those who follow the link will enter their mobile phone number and the code that they will receive on Telegram. And this is how the Telegram channel or profile is hijacked. And then I'm sorry, what is it? Yes, they can make mailings in the name of this person, of this user. They all follow scripts. They all follow templates, and all the scams that were presented yesterday by Rostelecom and today by Evgeny, they are all automated. You can earn money without having to do much. The same fraud scheme works not just in Telegram, but there is also investment scam when people are invited to invest into a particular project, or the Wheel of Fortune and gifts, awards. Classic scam. Well, sometimes, I mean, scam borders on phishing. By the way, you said, Evgeny, that it's possible to open a link there was something about IP address at a certain time. Okay, so it's a time limited link, right? It expires. Always we see that people open certain addresses, for instance, so that people of information security at Ozone wouldn't be able to see the link. There is a library that contains stop lists. And also, the stop list can be regional, and the regions can be not necessarily Russian. But for instance, the links would be active only in the region of Voronezh after 7 p.m., targeting people aged 40 plus, searching for something on Instagram.
Соответственно, возвращаясь к... Ой, извиняюсь.
And to go back. Oh, and to go back? Right. So to go back to the slides.
Могут быть не только через взлом, но и через...
Not only the accounts can be hijacked, but people can be added, or contacts can be added to the groups or channels on Telegram if these users do not have certain privacy settings. If you do not prevent third-party Telegram users to add you to groups, then this is how you end up in those groups. In WhatsApp, we found this scheme. There were about 170 phishing resources detected in WhatsApp, but the subject matter was slightly different. The School of Bali, same here. It's votes. You click the button to vote. You are asked to be authorized via the messenger. You enter your data, and you lose access to your account. The wrongdoers do not limit themselves to all Russian competitions of music or ballet. It can be anything. So if you are playing online games, then you will be offered to get a bonus game currency or an additional account or some game assets. If you are a lonely young man, you will be shown photographs of young ladies. And to get in touch with those ladies, you will have to enter your phone number or something. So either there is emotional appeal or informational appeal in these messages and these hooks, lures. So for every user, there will be a phishing page. Be careful. It was interesting to see in the previous presentation that 74% of the Ozone customers said that they were digitally literate. Well, probably they all had negative experience, and this is why now they consider themselves to be competent in matters of information security, and they understand the value of two-factor authorization and changing the passwords and protecting the family members. This is bringing me to the end of my presentation, but I'd like to use this opportunity and offer another topic for a discussion. So what do we do next? Phishing borders on scam. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk here, to voice this proposal. I call upon all hosting providers and operators, well, to think about security of your business, not just protecting it with the IS products, but to protect your users and customers through verification, perhaps, or some means of control. You know, there are registrars or hosting providers who are in our NT ratings, who are up to 80% of their users are scammers. So I suggest that maybe we draft a memorandum of understanding to exchange information. We are ready to share the information. We do not request anything back or in exchange. Please listen to us. Hear what we are saying. I think we've established our name in the Russian market already, and we are a trusted data provider. So just please take this feed from us, the information about the scammers that we have and their activity in your on your domains or in your on your host. We are not asking for anything in exchange. Just take heed of it. You know, pay attention to it and implement procedures and means of protection. Follow the example of our cooperation with the Coordination Center, the Domain Patrol. We already have signed such agreements with some hosting providers and even several registrars. So if you are thinking about it, and yesterday there were many discussions about new registrars and new users, the complaints of the new users of registrars. The users don't want much hassle. They don't want to share personal data. Well, if you agree to those terms, then you will be setting the ground for the criminals. And if you're thinking about simplifying the rules for your users, remember about security, not to be a leader in the anti-rating. I guess that's everything I wanted to talk about today. I will be happy to continue our discussions offline as well. I'd like to thank all the offline listeners. Again, you know how to contact us. You can find us or reach to us via ccTLD as well. Let's make the .ru.rf zone safer. All right, we have two questions from the floor. Andrei Romanov. Yes, hello, and thank you for your interesting presentation. Your website says we prevent and we investigate. Well, your presentation focused on prevention, but my question is about investigation. How efficient are your investigations? Can you protect the resources through an investigation? Can you bring the criminals to justice? Right, thank you very much for the question. Well, for us, it all started with investigations about 20 years ago. That's how we acquired our expertise. First, we investigated cybercrime, and then based on the acquired knowledge, we built products to prevent crime. So, in fact, we recommended to the rights owners to investigate every single case of cybercrime, and many rights owners are already very interested in doing that. I understand that not every investigation can be productive. Like there is, say, full anonymization, right? Some anonymize themselves very well, others don't. So it depends on the quality of anonymization. In our investigations, we also observe, gangs of criminals or individual perpetrators. We are tracing their mistakes to get access to their profiles, to de-anonymize them, to collect evidence for the law enforcement authorities. We are a for-profit organization, so we can't investigate every single cybercrime. We don't have enough resources. That's why we have to share our information with the law enforcement agencies. But again, if anyone is interested, we are willing to share the data and the information, and together with the law enforcement agencies, we can carry out an investigation. There are many cases. We have a blog at our website, and you can read about our investigations there. I just wanted to clarify my question. Kirill said that the fraudsters, they're switching from online to offline. They're becoming like physical fraudsters when the goods are, or the money is handed over to individuals. So you can capture that person, can't you? Well, you see, the cases are different. In offline, probably you have more opportunities. But yes, why not? I mean, we had experience like that. We helped capture an actual criminal. That happened when Group IB had presence in Russia and the CIS. We had we carried out joint. We participated in capturing CDN pirates, and these people were apprehended. They were apprehended. Kirill wants to add something. Well, to capture the person who came to the point of delivery to collect the product or the money, it seems to be much easier than finding the person somewhere online. But Stanislav said that there is a hierarchy in this business, criminal business, and unfortunately, the person who comes to collect the money or the product in the real world most likely doesn't know anything about the person who designed the phishing site, and the designer of the phishing site doesn't know the person who used it. So there are three different people who know absolutely nothing about each other, and they are invisible for each other, really. We are making the attempts to uncover the full scheme and apprehend the criminals in the real world, but very often the soldier, well, is not a general. The soldiers do not know and have never met generals. The drops.
Irina Danelia.
Stanislav. So Telegram, hijacking the Telegram channel. What do domains have to do with it? Oh, domains. You have to click the link. And Telegram is used to authorize the user at the link. So every time there is a vote on Telegram, there is a link, a final link, and that we communicated such abuses to domain patrol, where the link would be like telegram.rf, for instance. They create those links to hijack, or the name of the competition. There's a dot, then I, then dot .ru. So,
инструмент
but
распространения
the
ссылки.
Telegram is a means of propagating the link, the phishing link. Yes, it's a communication channel that can be easily automated. We are saying that the fraudsters are trying to automate and make their schemes less expensive. You can do a mass mailing. There is artificial intelligence that they're using now, a simple machine that can be attached to this, to dialogue, to communicate in a dialogue with the victim. And they are sending out links to the fake websites, presenting as our website or a marketplace website or a national competition website. So in phishing, you need to have a web page. And the web page must have a domain that is similar or looks similar to the domain of a real marketplace. That's why we're here. Right. Thank you. Now, let's give the floor to our online participants, Dmitry Kiryushkin from BioZone. Dmitry, we can see you, we can hear you. Good that you're with us. Yeah, great. So you are saying that you can hear me? Good, excellent. So, well, first of all, I would like to participate in this discussion that you are having. This last question, the people who are, conversing from online to offline, when the individuals are coming like troops or soldiers, like mules, they didn't know that it was a scam, or they see that you just, they know that you can get a product at half price, and to do this, you just show a QR code, and that's it. And they know everything that happened before that. As to school children and housewives, I agree with the colleagues that the entry threshold to design a web page and equipping it with automation is now extremely low. Everything is automated now, and many of the routine tasks have already been automated, like generating a phishing page, generating a unique link, etc., etc. So again, the entry threshold is at all-time low. All you have to know is how to use Telegram and click 2 buttons in the Telegram bot. Okay, sorry, that was an aside. But now let's turn to the presentation. I'll introduce myself again. My name is Dmitry Kiryushkin. I'm head of the Reputation Analysis Department at BioZone. And today I wanted to talk about the cases of domain hijacking to place phishing content on the domains. Now, this is BioZone statistics. In the last year, we analyzed with BioZone brand protection, we analyzed 925 database leaks. One of the trends we detected is that per every 100 employees of any company in those data leaks, you can find about 10 pairs of corporate logins and passwords. So there's an employee of a company registers the corporate with a corporate account at some social media page. There is a link from the social media page, and unfortunately, since people use the same passwords everywhere on all their services, so you may think that that's a social media leak has nothing to do with a particular corporation, but the passwords are leaked, and it's the same password as this employee is using inside the corporation. So this is a huge threat to banks, companies, all kinds of organizations. So I suggest that you use different passwords or a password manager, not to have repeated passwords. Password manager solves this issue. And the second thing on the number of phishing pages last year, we detected and blocked more than 110,000 phishing resources that targeted third-party customers. And another thing is, if a company has a personal account for the users, then 70% of cases, and there is a phishing percent probability that the company will have a fake or a phishing page in the internet. Now, to hijacking, what happened? So we keep blocking phishing websites, but the owners, the domain owners or holders, they come to us and they say that it got nothing to do with them. They had an educational portal there or an e-commerce store, but now we accuse them of phishing, but they have nothing to do with phishing. We are wrong. We start investigating, and it turns out that the criminals under certain circumstances will be able to place their own content. And in our case, that would be phishing content at domains that they do not hold. From the start of 23, we found more than 600 resources like that. We blocked them. The domain owners came to us with a request to investigate, and we found out that that's what's happening. Now, more specifically, how did it look like for the domain holder? The domain holder buys a domain, places something on the domain, and doesn't extend the payment for the services of the hosting provider. The record is still there, but the domain is not paid for. The criminals find these misconfigured domains, and under certain circumstances, they will be able to hijack, or rather to place the phishing content at the domains that they do not own. We found those phishing domains, we blocked them. And I wanted to thank the Domain Patrol once again for allowing us to block the phishing domains in Brunet very quickly. After we blocked the domains, we were contacted by the owners of those domains because they were not aware that the domains hosted something. So they thought that they were old, outdated, were holding something legitimate. But the criminals placed phishing content on those domains. That's how those 600 domains looked like. Basically, it's some phishing page. There is nothing new in this scheme. It's an old scheme. And I remember reading about domain hijacking back in 2021. But unfortunately, the users can still be tricked. Again, either the hosting services on this contract is not renewed, or there's another vulnerability. Colleagues from registrars prepared an article, and they explained what needs to be done so that your domain cannot be hijacked. Our colleagues, the Coordination Center, we all keep talking about, unfortunately, the users can still be tricked, and they still lose their domains. More than 600 domains were hijacked during 2023. I see that there is still some time left. Good. Now, on how money can be stolen with phishing pages, Evgeny has explained in his presentation how the gangs, Telegram gangs, operate. We studied that scheme that he presented, and we wanted to know how much money the scammers can steal. I found about 20 gangs like that, and on average, a scam gang can steal as much as 100,000 rubles. That means 2 million stolen a day per 20 teams. So that's a lot of money. No, that's just, you know, the profit of one day. The entry threshold is almost non-existent. It's down to zero. I mean, you can use phishing to fool victims. All you have to do is join a Telegram chat, and you can get all the detailed menus, which products sell best, what photographs you should be using, when the phishing link should be sent to the potential victim on day 1, on day 2, etc., etc. The manuals are very, very detailed. I agree with colleagues. Now, with respect to end users, those who are generating these links and they are communicating with the victims, they are often school kids or students. They may never have heard about domains or DNS records. They may not have a single idea of how internet works. All they have to do is to know how to press 2 buttons in a Telegram bot, and everything else is done for them. A unique link will be generated. Link will be hard to detect. It will have a unique URL. As Evgeny was saying, the link will be valid for a specified period of time. After a while, you will not be able to get access to this phishing contact, even if you have a link. So this is high-level phishing, but it doesn't require any skills at all. So that was our estimate of the value of thefts using phishing in Telegram. And we also wanted to understand what's the minimal threshold, what's the minimal value, what's the minimal cost for the criminals to set up a phishing page. Criminals are smart, they know how to count money, and they create phishing pages to earn money and to make more money than they're going to invest into maintaining their infrastructure. So we tried to compute how much money the criminals are spending on maintenance of their infrastructure. Now, in terms of the costs, they need to pay to register the domain. They can hijack a domain, and then it means that they're saving on the domain registration. Then there is hosting services. Then there is Cloudflare. There is anonymizer services, VPN, VPS services. SSL is free, but you need time to attach it. Various infrastructure support and advertising. In our experience, advertising is one of the more expensive items. So on average, we are looking at 5,000 to 7,000 rubles to set up and maintain one phishing domain. And advertising, again, is one of the most expensive items on the list. Fraudsters, in order to even out their costs and profits, they need to make at least 7,000 a day. If you multiply that by the number of phishing cases that our colleagues and I and us we detect, it means that we are looking at hundreds of millions of rubles a year that the criminals still using fake pages. Again, sorry for this aside. But to finish the story about the domain hijacking, what are the recommendations that we can give to our users? Well, first of all, if you own a domain and you place some content there before, but you no longer pay for the services of the hosting provider, please remove all your DNS records. Or there should be no NS records before you associate your domain with a hosting account. It's a simple thing to do, but many people neglect it. And already from the start of the year, we confirmed at least 600 cases of domain hijacking. That's it from me. If you have any questions, I'm still here. Yes, sure. Irina Daneli has a question from the floor. Thank you, Dmitry. Good afternoon. Mine is not a question, rather a comment. I guess about 18 months ago, I noticed in the international discussions too, the discussions around phishing and countering the threat, that there is a differentiation between the domains compromised and maliciously registered domains. I think that we have very few hijacked domains or compromised domains. We do not have a methodology of counting them, but still, even looking at the number of domains for which delegation was restored, it's around 1%. Your numbers confirm that 600 versus 30,000, for instance. But this year, I saw the DNS Abuse Institute data. Maybe you're familiar with this organization, and they keep their own statistics on malicious domains, including the domains in the .ru zone. And then numbers in the number of compromised or hijacked domains are much higher than I was expecting. I do not have the numbers in front of me right now, but it was like 10, maybe 15%. It's different order of magnitude. For me, it was a surprise. I think that it's something that's worth thinking about. Thank you. Sure. I would like to comment as to the statistics that I showed there. That's just one template of a phishing page, right? Only those domains, we counted at least 600 domains that follow the same template. As to how many domains can be hijacked in general, in theory, that meet the conditions, we found about 30,000 domains, suitable domains or eligible domains last year. I don't remember whether they were domains just in the .ru zone or maybe globally, but I remember this number around 30,000. But 600 is just the hijacked domain confirmed with domain patrol data, but most likely there are many more of them, in fact. Thank you, colleagues. We have another question from the floor.
Дмитрий, добрый день.
Hello, Dmitry. Do you find domain patrol easy to use? Yes. Very well. Do you remember that there is a provision in the rules on competent authorities, competent organizations? Do you mean item 5.7 that the registrar has the right to undelegate? Yes, but what kind of request the registrar should receive? What kind of request? Well, if I'm not mistaken, there should be a request coming from the competent organization confirming that there is phishing content on the website. Well, no, not exactly, not exactly. You see, the request should be grounded. Why do you make registrars spend their time on investigating your complaints or your request? You just state that according to your data it's phishing, but you do not provide any evidence. Well, if I'm not mistaken, competent organizations determine whether it's phishing or not. That's why they're competent. So if the competent organization informs you that it's decided that the website is a phishing website, so that's the idea. Well, actually, I agree with Dmitry. That's why a competent organization is a competent organization. It decides whether it's phishing or not. Well, in case of IP, you provide a lot of evidence. But no, I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm sorry. Well, you see, we received requests from you, like, this is a phishing website, undelegate, period. Is this okay? We go to the website, there is no phishing, we can't confirm that there is phishing. The website we wrote back to you, but we never received a response. One of the latest claims that we received, phishing, such and such domain, undelegate. Why not provide us with more explanations? There's phishing. Phishing looks like this. The phishing targets such and such audience. This is the website, Kontakte, Sberbank, whatever. So we can test it, so we can check it, so we can be held responsible for our actions, so that we take a grounded decision, an informed decision to undelegate. Well, if there are specific questions, then I suggest that you contact me directly. And we will discuss additional evidence in specific cases. And you say that it's not, well, you're asking us to identify the specific target audience. Well, it's not always possible. The screen that I showed you in the screenshot in my presentation it just says enter your credit card number to make a payment. We don't know. Oh, all right, but show us the link to this form that needs to be filled out. Well, usually that's what we disclose. That's what we send. No, 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 and no, and no again. No. Evgeny Pankov also wants to comment that he is a conflict resolution manager. Yes, we talked about it with Sergey yesterday. I showed him cases, and in that example, there was an attachment with a picture and with a link. And then Ilya said that, okay, I didn't notice that. So that domain was undelegated. But I will also agree with Ilya, and I'm going to raise this matter during the meeting of registrars and competent organizations in November. It would be best if the competent authorities would use the same templates for all cases, for reporting cases to the registrars.
Было обращение, было мотивировано, было вложение.
Я специально это вложение посмотрю на самом деле. Ну, ты же понимаешь, вопрос не в этом, а вопрос в постоянной такой проблеме.
Постоянно, я говорю, мы
No, the problem is evergreen. And as to data ref, you remember I contacted you and I explained why we couldn't undelegate data ref. I agree. Well, it was a different request. It was a different report. Okay. We'll fix it. Ilya, we have one more presentation, okay? And then if there is time left, we will organize a discussion. But there is one more presentation ahead of us. Besides, there is the comment from Maxim that it would be best if everyone would use the same template. So during the next meeting, we will include this item onto the agenda. And now I would like to invite Marina Brick from RusCenter to take the floor. Thanks to Ilya, we can now take the perspective of the registrars on this matter. Marina? Yes, hello, and thank you for inviting me here. I was asked to explain what's happening inside RegRu and RusCenter whenever we receive requests. Our function is quite straightforward. We need to stop or disrupt the abuse. We process the requests related to domains and hosting. Different stakeholders contact us. We work not only with competent organizations,
правообладатели и просто пострадавшие пользователи. Значит, цель наша, да, по запросам или прекращаем.
So we either put a stop to this abuse, or we respond in a different way. I'll explain what that means a bit later. From the start of the year, we received 160,000 reports.
Ради интереса, значит, госорганы присылают.
The government authorities send official requests containing up to 5,000 domains in one request, for instance. We have only 8 employees at our organization to process the request, and again, 14% and of all requests coming to RUSANT and 9% requests coming to reg.ru are coming from the government authorities. So we are helping the law enforcement authorities, the judicial authorities to put an end to this crime. Hosting. We have 4 people at Regru and RUSANT processing these requests, 8,000 requests per month at Regru are coming from hosting providers, and sometimes it's copyright, sometimes it's malware. Copyright goes to the lawyers, that's one track. Malware is analyzed. If it's spam, then email is blocked. If the customer account is hacked, then there will be one track of communication with the legitimate user. If we see certain patterns of behavior, similar patterns of behavior, we begin to block and prevent ordering new services to be used in some criminal activity. And the domain patrol, we have 5 people assigned to domain patrol at RUSANT, so we're receiving only 250 requests from domain patrol. These are averages for the year, and 3,000 at Reg.ru in August, up to 25% was the share of domain patrol requests in the total number of requests. And the flow is as follows. If necessary, we send a request to the competent organization to disable a domain. Then we will run an additional check via the security service. We delegate, we inform the administrator, the registrant, and we start the process of identification. Very few users come back to us to restore the delegation. So what are the main problems or challenges that we encounter? Given our workload, and I'm not yet counting the August request from the ccTLD, well, the challenges that we face is duplication of requests, for instance, or the same request repeated by the same organization, or errors in determining the registrar, or delays in getting the information. How did I close the presentation? It doesn't matter. Anyway.
Поняла. Окей.
Okay, got it. Anyway. Can you open the last slide, please? No, the next one. Okay, good. Registrants registered a domain. On the next day, we get a request to disable this domain, which is parked. Our employees have a lot of work on their hands. The employee disables the domain, and we get feedback what happened. I'm a registrant, I'm all legal and legitimate. Then yes, for 30 days, the domain was not delegated. It has a new registrant. The domain is parked. You can't do anything with the Spark domain. We received a request from a competent organization to disable it. We investigated the case. So yes, the crime happened in July, and we received this request in the end of August. So again, 15 people, 160,000 requests. We are looking for more work to do.
Нас ожидает увеличение на...
Well, it looks like we will have a lot of work to do in the future, judging by everything that's happening, judging by the trends that were discussed today. So yeah, I can see that can be a human error, but the competent organization is as overloaded as you are. They also need to investigate all the incidents. Again, this August report or request from the law enforcement authorities that came to the coordination center, and then we distributed it across registrars. I have a question. Yes. And maybe it's not on the topic, but can we go a couple slides back? Yes, this one. Is my understanding correct that when you receive, it was okay. So when you receive a report or a request, you are checking for malware or copyright violation and use your internal expertise, right? You are using your own expertise both for copyright violations and malware. You want engaging third-party experts, independent experts. If colleagues from Facts have already confirmed that there is a violation, can you speed up there? Can you automate it? If the request comes with a verification from, say, Facts, if you trust them, well, in case of hosting, you see, we are looking for the root cause. Was the customer hacked, or is it a real criminal? Well, as a consumer, really, I would like the response time to be very short. I can see your workflow. I've listened to your discussion on standardizing the templates and everything, but okay, even if there is a single template and a single way to confirm the need to undelegate the domain, and if the competent organization has already confirmed that and you trust the competent organization, maybe you can automate that period and save time there. And remove the registrant or registrar. No, the registrar is responsible, is ultimately responsible, and all the costs will be incurred by the registrar. I don't know if we can share our responsibility with the competent organization. Well, liability. It's very easy to register a domain, and I understand why registrars and registries need it. The more domains, the better for everyone, including criminals. But maybe, well, they know how to automate things, so let's learn automation from them. Of course, I wouldn't want to be their accomplice. A question to everyone. Do we want to change the principles of domains, registrations, and disabling, disconnecting, dedelegating the domains? Maybe we need to have universal automation for the decision to undelegate to be taken not by a competent organization and not by a registrar, but by, say, artificial intelligence. Anna Karahanyan, your microphone, please. You see, all government institutions in Armenia, do you know who protects those hosting providers? They do it themselves. They said that the National Security Service, a government agency, a law enforcement agency, is willing to offer its protection service, security services to hosting providers. So is my understanding correct? There is National Security Service that They want to offer all the services themselves, and that's how they want to get rid of malware. No, there is an option called locked by authority. There are domain names that are locked by authority. Others can change the domains, and you need to get an authorization from the government agencies to unlock them. Oh, okay, that's common practice, I understand. But as to undelegating, that's a huge challenge, and we even established a special commission. Grigory is the head of this commission. He's our manager. There is an algorithm that this commission follows. We receive a report or some disclosure and screenshots as evidence. Well, what we are trying to do is first give a warning to the owner of the domain. Maybe the owner can rectify the situation. We can give the owner a week or two to address the issue. And if it's fixed, no, Andre, I understand you're smiling, but it's a problem for us. We can't. On the one hand, there is the pressure coming from our lawyer who says that, no, we don't have the right to undelegate. Then what do we do? And the police just says, hand the case over to us, because phishing is a crime. It's a crime. So it means that there is no job for us. Andrei, yes, please. The registrar had a comment, another registrar had a comment. But to reduce the time, to significantly cut the time on handling the blocking request or dedelegation or undelegation request, well, it's really in the hands of the competent organization. If you would provide evidence, then there wouldn't be a lot of delays. Well, that's exactly why we're saying it. The average response time, as I was on yesterday, you also had this information in Evgeny's presentation, it's 22 hours.
То есть мы делаем все отлично, все 100 из 100. Мы можем поделиться этой экспертизой. Давайте.
We can share our expertise. You can invite us to your workshop or something. We'll share our expertise. We can share our best practice. Yes, this autumn, exactly, yes, this autumn, every November, we hold a meeting of all registrars and competent organizations. We've been holding this event for the past 5 years, so you're welcome to talk at this event. Dmitry, I think you raised your hand and you wanted to join the discussion, right? No, not really, but yeah, I'm given the floor. Again, if you have any additional questions, please write to me. I mean, if there are any issues or problems with evidence or anything, please, or if you want to learn more about specific fraud schemes, just let us know and we'll share the data with you. Okay, then I will summarize the session. And a quick comment from our active online listener who's been with us yesterday and today. Maxim sent another comment. Maxim, thank you very much. Thank you for all your comments. And if there is time during the session, your comments are read out. It's just that some of your comments didn't look like questions and they were more like statements, but speaking about automation of everything and the automation of undelegation process, if registrars are removed from the chain, if there is a police or if some other third party does the delegation, then the agreement is between the end user and the registrar, and under this agreement and the money under this agreement, the money and the liability, the penalties defines, they will fall on the registrar. I'd like to thank all the panelists, and the main takeaway from the session, as I see it, is we need to try to cut the response time. We are improving on our latency year on year. It's not happening as fast as we'd like it to happen. The criminals are ahead of us. Their automation is better. Then let's think about our automation. A large registrar has just shared the information on how many people they have to process all these reports, and we are already losing. She said, what was it? One of the panelists said 6,000 rubles is the cost of one phishing site. So for us, it costs the same, probably in terms of labor rates. Or maybe actually we are paying more. Maybe every incident costs us 5, 7, 10,000 rubles. Let's do the sums. So again, maybe we should make the registration process harder. On day 0 of this conference, we talked about it, connecting to the identification authorization systems, not only of the .ru, .rf, .su domains, but in other countries, they also have national systems of authorization identification. It's the Black Mirror, we need to count every single person. Hosting the same in Russia. The hosting providers will have to authorize their clients via the national government identification authorization system. That's the general trend. So at this point, I would like to close session 6. We talked about time, we talked about money, and we talked about challenges of all stakeholders. I'd like to thank everyone. So once again, session 6 is closed. Now I'd like to invite Andrei Vorobyov to the microphone. Andrei is the director of ccTLD.ru.
Основные итоги. Давайте сначала непосредственно конференцию.
Okay, so the main takeaways. Let's talk first about TLD. Andrei, do you think that we exhausted our agenda? What about the program committee's performance? Were the topics discussed relevant? I have already received some feedback from colleagues who've been listening to the conference here in the Republic of Karelia. But from the perspective of the program committee, how would you rate yourselves? Well, of course, it's up to the participants to rate us. Everyone who attended this conference as a participant or as a speaker, this year the program committee, as a community of experts that offered recommendations on the program, recommended speakers and topics for the sessions, worked rather efficiently, and many of our suggestions were accepted and included into the program. And many of the speakers who we nominated were actually invited to speak and made presentations here.
Опять же, подчеркну, что конечную оценку даст
one more time, I believe that it's up to the audience to evaluate our performance, to rate us. I hope very much that the conference will again take place next year. And the membership of the next conference will be good evidence to the quality of this year's conference.
Баги, как мы
All the
говорим.
technical glitches that we had during the conference, I'd like to apologize for them. Oh, the bugs. Okay, no, you're right, bugs. The technical glitches, right? But I believe that they were within tolerance limits. Thank you. We did our best. On behalf of all participants of the conference, on behalf of the organizing committee, I'd like to thank the program committee. You worked exceptionally, and the program committee begins its work again the next day after the current conference. I believe the competent organizations were actively involved in the conference this year, and it's something we need to preserve for next year. It's a best practice now we need to take on board, and there have already been suggestions about our partners from other countries that we need to extend this positive experience to neighboring countries. I think it would be a good idea, but in any case, it's something that we can discuss at TLDCon next year. Another feature of the 16th conference was the educational track. I've just been to the administration of the Petrozavodsk municipality. I've just talked to Leonid Elevenchukov from the Legislative Assembly of the Republic of Karelia. And I know that the conference was attended also by the deputies of our parliament, and they also have suggestions and proposals as to how we can organize the zero. Yesterday we launched the School of Mentors. Our project is called Study the Internet and Govern It. 2023 is the year of teachers and mentors in Russia, and we plan to provide trainings in different regions of the country to the tutors, to the parents as well, for them to learn how to be anchors in terms of internet governance literacy in their locations. And since we initiated this project here in Karelia, we already received 50 requests from the teachers. The first 50 teachers will be trained in October. In December, they will be receiving documents of advanced professional training. So this will be another good takeaway from this conference and a contribution of our conference. Well, Andrei mentioned involvement of competent organizations. Well, it's not the first time, like Group IB and now FACT. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the company, the BuyZone, and other competent organizations. Traditionally, they have always attended our session on security. For many years, we'd like to thank them. They have always been strong contributors to the program. So we did not have a dedicated session on communication with the competent organizations, but in any case, they have always been contributors with the content and to the program. You know that we used to present the next location of our conference at the end of the current conference. So we will definitely organize our next conference offline, well, in a hybrid format, definitely. As to the venue, the potential venue, there is a choice of them. And we are looking at Russian cities. Artists, the registrar, has been inviting us to Kaliningrad for many years now. Then there is Minsk also. Minsk has often applied to host TLDCon. Tashkent in Uzbekistan, they also I remember there was a nominal host because the conference, when they were hosts, was held during the pandemic. We'll see where our next conference is going to take place, but there will definitely be a day zero and the educational track. One other takeaway of this conference is the signing of the agreement between the Coordination Center and the Petrozavodsk State University. We planned to sign this agreement already in summer, and during the days of the conference, we held a signing ceremony. But what's important really is that we have already read the first lectures to the students of the School of Physics and the School of Law and Economics under this agreement. And the cycle of lectures, this will be a permanent feature in the curriculum of the university, and we hope that the students will now contribute contribute to the project of universal acceptance of IDNs in Russia. So again, we welcome students. We'd like to thank Maria Kolesnikova and Vadim Mikhailov. They are what are they? They're volunteers. They're not just volunteers. They are the spearhead of the Поддерживаю РФ project. We'd like to thank all the partners. Yesterday at the reception, Evgeny Kuskechev said that it's wonderful to see our IPN among the organizers of this professional and industrial conference. But how can we be without, we can't envision ourselves without our IPN. They have always been at the cradle of the whole, industry, of the whole movement. Do you remember the Vilarne tradition, the Kurchatov Institute traditions? Because this is where RUNET started. That was the cradle of RUNET, basically. RUNET, the oldest registrar, TCI, the register, ccTLD or ccTLD domains, and MSK-IX, the infrastructure operator. So I'd like to thank all the sponsors and organizers of the conference. We'd also like to thank the listeners for finding an opportunity to come here. The atmosphere of this conference is so friendly because there is an opportunity to talk to each other face to face. The conference offers plenty of opportunities for socializing, networking. I believe that both presentations and also offline communications and evening events, they all they all made a significant contribution into advancing our agenda. I would like to thank also the administration of the Petrozavodsk municipality. Later in the day, we will be taking a tour of the city, and the deputy head of the administration of the Petrozavodsk city, Natalia Karmazina, was the first to believe that the organization of the conference will be of sterling quality, and she helped us arrange all our meetings and to organize the educational track. So we'd like to thank absolutely everyone and see you at TLDCon 2024.